Hello everyone, how are you? My name is Nishant, and in this video we will talk about Google VPC and related features. So, as you know that when you go on any public cloud, you just take a name like AWS, Azure or Google Cloud. The first thing or most important thing that you do first is you create your VPC. VPC is a virtual private cloud basically, and you can say it's your virtual network, and whatever you create after that you create inside VPC. You create a subnets, you create your VM, so you create your any other resources. Everything will be under the VPC. In Google, the VPC is really quite different than any other public cloud. In other public cloud, the VPC is region specific. However, in the Google, the VPC is the global. So when you create a VPC, basically you don't specify here any region. You just specify the VPC name, and under that, when you create the subnet, you specify the region. So whatever traffic by default from all the subnets, since the VPC is global level. So let's say if you have a one subnet on USA and the second subnet in India, both will be able to talk to each other using the Google global network. And the reason why is that the Google VPC is a global. So that's the really amazing or the beautiful feature as compared to any public cloud. First of all, I'll show you when you log into Google, you will see by default, you will see one VPC here, which is default VPC. That's something you don't need to create. It will be there by itself. It's not something that you are creating. When you to Google, you will see by default. So when you click here, this is my VPC name, which is default one. I'll click on subnet. So as you can see that there are subnets on each specific region. Africa South 1, Asia East 1, Asia South 1. Across all the region there is a single subnet. So as a standard best practice, what you need to do is that in case if you are preparing your learning zone, you just delete this default VPC. Or before I delete, let me tell you what other things will be there. So one is you see your VPC itself and the related subnet. You will also see the firewall rules over here, which is default. These are the rules that is something that you did not create it so far. It is already there with as a default one. And the second one you will see, you can audit these rules also. By default there are four rules. One you will see for ICMP, which is usually for the ping. This is for ingress traffic. This is also for ingress traffic. It's for RDP, and this is for SSH. And these are the all other port from 0 to 6500 6000 no, it's 65535. Yeah. So and then you can go back to here, go back to VPC network, and you can see the routes, the default routes. So right now you can see there is a one route management is already there, which is default routes to internet. So whatever is traffic coming to this route, it's like a gateway. Whatever is traffic is coming, it's going to internet. Now first thing what I will do, I will simply delete the default VPC. Click here, default the VPC. Copy here, paste default, and you can see the progress from here. It will take some time. Let me go back to, meanwhile let me close here, compute VM instance. Now what I will do, I'll try to create one VM create VM. I'll put the name here. Nishant test VM. And you can see when you create a VM, it will ask you the region and also the zone. If you are not aware about what is the region and zone, region is basically it's the country itself. Example, in America, US West 1, okay, and inside the West 1 there are 3 zones, means 3 different data centers are there. Similar like when you click, let's say, Europe West 1, you will see there are 3 different physical location. So in West 1B there is a totally separate data center, C is another data center, and D is another data center. Now I'll select the US West 1 and type suggestions. Oh, this is something new. This is something new. It was not there before. Interesting. Describe your workload, requirement like cost. Let's try. I want to create a VM for the, let's say, for the database requirement. No, let me try the web application like Nginx. Suggest me VM. Let's try. This is something really new. I have never seen this option here. When you create the VM, before it was straightforward, now you see. Wow, this is really nice. Now what you can see the E2 medium, E2 micro and standard. Okay, you see the pricings also. It's $24, 2 memory 4 and lower cost 670. I'll simply, let's say, go for this, select. It's good. Okay, so I just select the type. So as you can see, it's a E2, and I can still customize in case if I want to customize the core and memory. I can customize from here. And I'll do one thing, I'll just leave it like this, or if you want, let's play with it a little bit. So now you can see my machine type right now, it's E2 medium, which is 2 CPUs, 1 core and 4 GB memory. When there are 2 CPU, each CPU has one core, right? Now I'll go for standard. I'll keep 4 CPUs, vCPU, 2 and 16 GB. What all options we have? vCPU core subscription. This is really very interesting. CPU, let me explain you the vCPU core ratio subscription. So what happens usually, let's say, you have this hardware, right? And now consider there is an Intel processor. On each processor you have a 16 core. Okay, now for one moment consider you have 1 core here out of 16. Okay, so when you install your virtualized software over here, basically what you're doing, in case of VMware ESXi or Nutanix AHV, you are basically virtualizing all your resources which is available on this hardware. So for CPU also, what we do, there is something called CPU over subscription. So this subscription you can do 1:3, 1:2, 1:6 or 1:7. It's all depend on your workload. So example, if you have 16 core And if you are just going to run your standard workload, so you can easily consider 16 ratio multiplied by 3 in some cases, right? It's 16 multiplied by 3, which is 48 core, right? So that means you can create a VM on top of this hardware or top of this particular server. Let's say you can create around multiply, let's say each VM is having 4 core, so you can create around 12 VMs easily on this particular node. Okay, so you can now just imagine, example, you have 16 multiplied by 3, so total you have 48 core from one hardware, though the actual core is 16, right? But you all need to size it based on the workload what you're going to run. In case of databases where you really required more CPU or dedicated CPU, you cannot consider 1:7 and 1:5 or 3. You need to go for 1:1 or 1:2, right? If you have any doubt on this particular subject, ping me in the comment. I'll be happy to give you more detail, or maybe we'll to make separate video about that. So for time being, I will just select 1 vCPU per core, standard, and remaining thing, as you can see, there is a code also available here. In case if you are doing your infrastructure code or any other tool platform, you can just copy this, and if you have Terraform, you can copy your Terraform code here and you can use it for your future deployment. Now to select the OS, click change, let's leave it Debian. You can select your OS here. In my case, leave it Debian. There are multiple options available. The one is balanced persistent, extreme persistent disk, SSD. These all types is basically differentiating based on the IOPS available. So in my most of the deployment, I just select the balanced persistent disk. But in case if you really require very high throughput, you can select SSD persistent and you can click compare the disk to see the IOPS. So you can see from here there is a standard, balance, SSD and thing. So you can see the highest IOPS you will get from extreme, and here you will get around 15,000 read IOPS, and here 3000, and standard you get 375. Okay, so if your workload is not really that sensitive, but and the same time you are very cost effective, you can go for cost sensitive, you can go for standard option. But in my most of the development or deployment, I go for 3000, which is balanced, right? So I'll click on the balanced, and that's why the balanced option is the first, because most of the customer or most of the engineers who are deploying, sometimes they are not comparing, they just simply select the whatever the first option is there. So I'll just select this, select snapshot. You have option to configure the snapshot. You can configure the different schedule based on your RPU and RTO, and this snapshot is virtual machine level snapshot, so it will take the entire instance backup or the virtual disk backup. It's not the application consistency. That means in case if you want to restore this data, so you will restore the entire virtual machine, you will not restore the regular its individual files, you will restore the entire virtual machine. Click on network. I'll just simply allow the HTTP and HTTPS. The host name you can specify from here, and right now the network, you see there is a default network, but I think we have deleted this, still it is showing. That means something wrong. Yeah, I think we deleted this. We need to go back and create the VPC, then only we'll be able to create the virtual machines, right? But this is the step which specify your network, the VPC, and then you can specify the subnet here. There are two options available for the network card. One is the Vert IO and one is GWiki. GWiki is the most recommended one. It's a Google, basically the native driver for the network card. The Vert IO is the old one. So if you are deploying the new setup, always it is recommended to go for GWiki. Okay, and this is the ephemeral. So if you want your permanent ephemeral, that means it's a temporary, it's not the permanent IP address. When you say ephemeral, that means it will be a temporary IP address. And you can specify, you can reserve also, in case if you don't want to go for, if you want to go for the permanent IP address. In most of the cases in the secure environment, what we do, we don't specify any external IP address, because the architecture side is not recommended to have the external IPs directly on your instance. And the reason why is that your internal IP address is only aware about the OS. The external IP address, whatever you are assigning, it is not aware, or it's not something visible to the operating system. So in the most best practices, don't enable the external IP addresses, leave it none. And this is the primary this, and this is also, you should be specifically the internal IP address also, you should be having the automatic only. You should manage your own IP range. If you specifically managing the large environment, then you should go for manual only. The remaining setting is okay, and then after that, once you click the create, your virtual machine will be ready. So before we come here, let me just go quickly and create a new VPC. So right now you see that there is no VPC. Even if I'll click the rules, I will not see anything over here. Right, firewall, nothing is there. I'll just simply go to VPC again and create a new VPC network. Let's say Nishant VPC, right? So we have two options here. The one is custom and one is automatic. When you select the automatic, what will happen? It will deploy the subnet across all the regions. The one I showed you earlier, something like that. But right now I'll click the custom only. So now I can specify the subnet here. I'll specify my subnet, web subnet, okay, or web servers, and I'll create this in US West 1, and remaining setting I will leave as it is. I'll just specify the IP range, so I'll make it 192.168.0.1/24, right? Okay, and just click okay. Something wrong, yeah, this is okay. I'll allow all these default firewall settings, remaining leave as it is, and I'll just simply, there are many options available here. If you are deploying, you need to go for each single options and make sure it's aligned based on your requirement, and just click create. Take some time. Yeah, successfully created. Let's validate what we have deployed. Let's check our subnet. See that my subnet is there. Let's see the routes. I think there is no routes. Let me click on route management. Yes, there is no route. Let's quickly create the route so it will get the internet. to internet. Okay, the destination I'll just make 0.0./0. So everything is allowed. Creating routes. Okay. It was already there. Okay, you can see this route by default. It was there. It was not just visible, so whatever I have created, let me quickly delete that, because when you create the VPC by default you will see the routes. It will be created by your VPC itself. Now go and create the VMs. Web server, right? Web server region. Let's leave it. Last time we checked this option, it's really cool. For now, let's customize this. Use this. Let's change from here. I'll go for this. It's okay, right? Decent one. This one is decent one. 4 VCP, because 2 vCPUs these days. What you will run? You will run nothing on it. 8 GB memory. It's a very small instance. So the recommended one is go for 4 vCPUs and 16 GB. I have in the production, I'm using some application which is 2 vCPUs and 8 GB memory, but those applications are really very light, running, you can say, just a very small web page, and I don't see any issues with the specs. But I always recommend this 4 vCPUs and 16 GB. I know the costing wise is a bit higher side, but if the application is really important, you have to go for these options. You can select the standard one here. OS, just leave it. Use these options we have. In case if you have any custom image that you have created, let's say for your environment only, you can upload here and you can use it for your future references. In case if you have a snapshot and all, it's similar like what options if you're working with the VMware or any other on-prem environment. These options are pretty much simple, just a different name and different concept, but the concept is same basically. This scheduling, usually what I do, in the large enterprise or the environment, usually we have a dedicated backup tool to manage this kind of operations, so we really don't depend on the native option over here, and the restore portion also is not that flexible as the dedicated backup tools such as Veeam or HiQ, or let's say Commvault, or other backup software like Cohesity. So right now I'll just leave it no. Networking portion, I just allow these options here, and subnet by default. Okay, these agent is basically your monitoring agent. So what will happen by default when you provision the VM, the small agent will be installed inside your operating system, and this agent is basically collecting the informations from the OS itself related to monitoring. So by default, just select the install op agent. It will not consume any memory or anything on the OS itself. I have been many VMs running. We don't see any performance penalty because of this agent, and it's really help when you specifically wants to do observability or monitoring using Google native services. You just leave as it is. By default, VTPM, we leave it enabled, and there are many other options available. You can select based on your requirement or your planning, but these are something default. Like example, the data encryptions, if you have your cloud KMS, you can use it. Otherwise, you have option to use the Google manage encryptions key. This is something managed by Google only, but in case if you have your own cloud, you can specify the details about your KMS, or otherwise just leave as it is. And this is also the important options. the customer manage revocation policy. Just make sure it is aligned based on your infrastructure need, and then only you select this. One more important option is that this one, delete protection. So enable delete protection, that means sometimes we stop and delete the instance, right? Or when we clean the environment. So when you enable this option, what will happen, even if you delete the instance, your disk will be still there. You can go and you can retrieve the disk, or you can create the VM from that disk. But if you leave it unchecked, what will happen when you delete your VM, everything will be deleted from the disk perspective. So there will be no chance to data recovery. Now you can see my VM is getting deployed. Next. Yes guys, so now you can see that the VM is accessible and I can access the VMs. Things are ready. You can even run the ping, and you will, let's try to ping 8.8.8. You can see ping is there, and now our VM is ready to use. So thank you so much. This is all about the VPC on Google Cloud. Now you are aware about what is the difference between the VPC on Google and any other public cloud, as VPC is a global specific, not the region specific here, and the subnets what we are creating inside the VPC, they are region specific, and whatever resources you create inside the VPC, and then you can leverage many feature which is available under the VPCs. Thank you so much to watching my video, and if you have any suggestions or if you feel any area of improvement, please ping me on the comment. I would really love to help you, and if you like any specific topic that you want to cover, please let me know. I would really love to work on that. Thank you so much. And you can also connect me on my LinkedIn. You can also send me email. I'm always available to support. And thank you so much again. Have a good day. Bye bye.